This background, I think, is entirely appropriate.
Mm,
It's not just the forest landscape, but it's the
mm,
sky.
mm.
And who was it, Fiona? Did you say you've seen this? Or anyway, the
The
point,
aurora borealis, yeah.
uh, you know,
Recently, it's come down because of the sun, the activity of the sun.
yeah, I did a lot of work up there, and I just felt their mythologies reflect, as you said, Fiona, very elegantly early on. Anyway, um, in my 4 years in university in Trinity College, there was only one course that caught my imagination in my business and economics degree, and it was on systems thinking. And it was a sort of scientist looking at things as a whole, which was so different from how they tended to look at things by breaking them into bits and understanding the relationship of one bit when it acted on another bit. So the systems thinking I just found really exciting. But one of the things I would say, having like Fiona gone into this Norse mythology in a bit more depth, I think that it thinks it thinks systemically. It is a systemic way of thinking. And if you think of it like that, things make sense. What I'd like to do is to try and pull out some of those themes. I'm going to occasionally make reference, but also what I'd like to do is see if I can pull out. I did a program on world religions once, and it was very interesting to see how a body of stories create a world and meaning making. And I'll try and pull out some of those as we go through. So, what I am going to do is talk about, does that work? You're not looking at it back to front. I'm going to talk about this great tree, Yggdrasil, that's absolutely at the heart of the Norse cosmos. It is their organizing center, and it is a mighty ash tree. Not only were humans created out of trees, but their central image and organization is a mighty ash tree. And also related to it is their 9 worlds, of which the human one is Midgard, from which we get Middle Earth, which Tolkien did so much to popularize. The battle for Middle Earth is the line that, in a way, encapsulate the Lord of the Rings mythology. We are in a battle for Middle Earth. So, right at the core of the Norse universe, we have Yggdrasil. And it's more than just a tree. In some ways, to use a physical analogy, it's like the spine of a body. It holds everything together. And its vast branches reach right across the 9 realms of the Norse world. And here's a lovely little detail. From each of these branches fell a sugary dew, the first honeydew, and it was later worked by swarms of bees to make honey. What a lovely little touch. You've got a tree that gives off a lovely dew that's honeydew. Now, Yggdrasil was anchored by 3 enormous roots, and I think that's another lovely theme, is that there's stuff you can see, and then there's stuff that's underneath the earth, the roots. And Yggdrasil was anchored by these 3 enormous roots. And the lowest stretches in to Niflheim, which is this realm of ice and cold. And the middle route reaches into Jotunheim, which is the land of giants. And Fiona's told us about the giants, the Jotuns, that were given birth to initially and in a way had to be contained by this fence, which was the teeth of Ymir. kept out the giants. And then the highest route extended into Asgard, which is the world of the gods. So in a way, it was both a route and extended right up into the trunk of the tree. Now, one of the themes that's a sort of a connection to systemic thinking, which is this great tree was not untouched by danger. And it's a reminder in systems thinking that there's always ever present the forces of chaos. In systems thinking, it's called entropy. And it sort of implies we are always falling apart. Our communities are falling apart. Our cultures are falling apart. We are falling apart unless we do something about it. And in the case of the Norse world, it was deep beneath in these roots was the dragon Nidhogg, who gnaws endlessly at the roots, seeking to destroy Yggdrassil. So ever present is a force of falling apartness, which we have to encounter or do something about. There's also a squirrel named Ratatosker, who runs up and down the tree. What a wonderful thought, delivering messages and insults between the creatures above and below. So we've got a dragon gnawing away, and we've got a squirrel running around delivering messages and insults, and we have an eagle soaring around its crown. We have 4 stags leaping between the branches. So the animal world is hugely present, nibbling on the leaves, which again, it's not a malign force, it's just the stags need to eat. So they're eating away at this tree Yggdrasil. And we even have a goat named Hydron who's chewing away at its bark. So we have this tree that gives a sort of feeling of ever present, but also a consistent reminder of the vulnerability and the precariousness of existence, because even something as marvelous and grand as this noble tree is being unraveled, which gives you both a sense of permanence and the eternal at the same time as the fragility of life and the fragility of every aspect of it. Now we come to what the tree was meant to stand for. And one of the consistent themes is right at the core of this mythology is not power, it's knowledge and it's wisdom. So this is a tree that's said to contain all the wisdom of the world, which also implies that the wisdom's in the natural world. Knowledge is in the natural world. The knowledge is in Yggdrasil. What a thought. Fiona's even more excited. Yggdrasil existed to serve, it was there in service of all living creatures. All living creatures, even the Jotun, even the elves, even the characters down in Jotunheim and trolls and Nidhogg. The tree was there to serve all living. It was extremely democratic in its, I'm humanizing it almost, in its attitude. And so as a result, it was Odin's sacred tree. And it was a sacred presence to all Norse people. And what they said was to simply see it, was to calm a troubled mind. Imagine that. To look at a tree would calm a troubled mind. You don't need a pill You just need to look at Yggdrasil and your tortured mind would be calmed. And at the center of the tree in Asgard, the realm of the gods, lives Odin. Now, here's an interesting one. Odin has taken for his wife a beautiful Jotun maiden. So already in the marriage of the most powerful of the Norse gods is a crossing of worlds. So it's like fosterage. It's like intermarriage. The Austrians used to say, other nations fight, we marry. But this is hard woven into the Norse mythology. It's not a fight, it's a marriage. So he is marrying a Jotun who's existing on the other side of the fence that Ymir's teeth are up to keep them out. He's marrying, eyebrows, to keep him out. And this all-powerful god from Asgard and his Jotun wife father a new generation of gods, which you'd learn about as you listen to the rest of the stories. Characters like Thor and Balder and Heimdall and Bragi and Vali, all wonderful characters who play a vital role in the rest of the mythology. But Odin is the supreme god, and his connection to the tree is very central. Now, one of the things that creates a mythology and a meaning system is not just the compelling characters, the archetypes, and the stories around them, but the rituals. A ritual is what a community does that's meaningful, does together, that is meaningful. And there are some individual rituals, and there are some community rituals. Now, Odin, who is a god of wisdom, gains even more wisdom with a strange ritual. He hangs himself upside down on Yggdrasil for 9 days and 9 nights without sleep and in great pain. And on the 9th night, he sees shapes on the ground, twigs that had fallen from the tree that had formed symbols. And these were the runes. They contained an alphabet of magical knowledge and were a source of great wisdom and deep power. And what's so interesting there is, where did this wisdom come from? The same place, the natural world. And in the twigs that fell from the tree, they form shapes which form symbols, which forms an alphabet, which forms a knowledge system. And it's this rune wisdom that became the foundation for communication across time, not only to those alive, but to those yet to be born, which reminds me of Edmund Burke's great wisdom that life is a contract between the dead, the living, and the to be born. There's an intergenerational past, present, and future. The great Irish thinker Edmund Burke outlined, but he would have been very happy to know that this rune wisdom also had that same intergenerational feel. And the knowledge from Yggdrasil was profound, but like many forces, because as Fiona said, there's nothing binary. The knowledge from Yggdrasil had 2 faces. It could certainly heal. It could heal, as we know, by looking at it, but it could also be used for spells and curses, and it could be twisted into forms of harm. In a way, it's not the thing that was wrong, it would have been the use of it. So, wisdom's at the core of this mythology. Knowledge is at the core, not power. Wisdom is at the core of this mythology. And Yggdrasil was more than a mystical symbol. It was also a physical center for important rituals. Because what does the community do that's important to it? Well, what the community did, the Norse community, is the Aesir gods would gather at Yggdrasil every morning, and they would form a council to discuss the state of the world. It was a meeting place where the different gods and goddesses and the different worlds would come together, and they would judge what is just and fair. That was a priority. What is fair? What is just? And they would also make sure that everyone had their say, which doesn't that have echoes of American Indian gatherings? So they would meet and they would listen to each other. Now, when matters were particularly serious, they would bring in the goddesses, the Asnur, and they were called in and they were listening to. So these gatherings were acts of community building and balance. Absolute echoes of the fifth province in the Irish mythology. The meeting places as a ritual meeting place at a sacred time, and with a process that's about listening and working stuff out rather than some, didactic edicts and tablets. This is a working out mythology. And after these councils at Yggdrasil, the gods would ride across Bifrost, which was a rainbow bridge back to Asgard. What a wonderful image of a rainbow connecting worlds. And the red in the rainbow was a band in fire protecting them by burning the feet of the giants and trolls who are trying to cross worlds. Now, there you've got a contradiction, because they're trying to keep the Jotuns out, but the most powerful god has married a Jotun. We've got a protective device to keep them out, but we're marrying one of them. And the tree was not only defended by the gods, and this is a wonderful little thing, or not a little thing, but there was a powerful force. Maybe Marlon will talk about them. The Norns, 3 mysterious giant maidens, the Norns. What a wonderful thought. They were weavers of fate, and they appeared at every birth to determine the destiny of the newborn. They could bless or doom a life, and no one could escape their decisions. But if something strange happened in the world, they would always say it was the Norns. But beyond this fate-giving thing, they were the caretakers of the tree. And they would draw water from sacred springs to nourish its roots and protect its bark, which is being eaten by the goats. So they are, in a way, what the systems thinkers would call negative entropy. They were a force of negative entropy. They were contradicting the tendency of things to fall apart by doing something that holds it together. So they were the Norns, these marvelous, mysterious giant women. And they played an immense role in maintaining the balance of the cosmos. Do you remember that in the fifth province, the organ that related to the fifth province was the kidneys, and the kidneys play a balancing role. So here we have balance. The role is not power over, it's balance between these opposing forces. So, as we've said repeatedly, Yggdrasil, like all things in Norse mythology, is always in danger of collapse. Things are always falling apart. And that's why the rituals, the community rituals, and the beings and the creatures that create the rituals and the mythology that's about the rituals, they are the community or mythological act that counters the forces of falling apart. And so we have in this wonderful tree in its 9 worlds, we have a tree that restores and calms and heals. but at the same time reminds us of life's fragility and its wonders and its strength. And so with Yggdrasil understood, the Norse cosmos is nearly complete. In Asgard we have the gods. Now the gods create halls. Another amazing feature of this mythology. They don't create weapons, they create a hall. And what is the hall for? Feasting. Just like the fifth province. Let us all meet in a bloody great hall and feast. So every one of the gods in Asgard have a damn great hall. And if you remember Finn McCool, when he arrives, the monster is destroying the king's hall. So these mythologies seem to recognize the importance of the place, which is the hall, and the importance of protecting the hall, and the hall as an empty space for the people to meet. And when they meet, they feast. But we all know what happens when they feast. They also talk and party and have the likes of Peter in there playing the harp, and everyone is taken into another world. So Gladtime was the hall of gold. Vingolf was the hall of the goddesses. Valakskalf is Odin's own hall, and it has a roof of silver, where he sat on his high seat and looked out over the 9 worlds. One of the reasons he had wisdom is he could see everything. And on his shoulders sat 2 ravens, Hugin, which represents thought, and Munin, that represents memory. And they flew across the realms bringing news back to him. So he had little messengers or out there flying around, these 2 ravens on his shoulder. And so what we have is Vanaheim as well. There was another body of gods, the Vanir. Now, true to form, the relationship between the Aesir and the Vanir was not without tension. So there was a bit of inbuilt tendency to fight. And what we will see is there were battles in this world. It wasn't a happy live ever after kind of utopia, because the Aesir saw themselves as the true rulers of the cosmos. And it was not a view shared by all. So there was fights, and there was the war of the gods. And at last we have Gimle, the high heaven. And so now we have the 9 worlds. We haven't had time to go into them all. We know about Niflheim and Asgard and Jotunheim and Midgard. But there's also worlds of elves and dwarves and trolls and giants, just incredible imaginative creatures that in a way populated the incredible mythology that's arguably the mythology of the 21st century, Tolkien's take on it, because we all know about the hobbits and the various wonderfully rich characters, the elves and the dwarves and the tree people, all fired by this incredible mythology, the mythology of the Norse world. And it's all connected and held together by the sacred tree Yggdrasil, which, as we know, can heal, but it is all the time in danger of being unraveled by Nidhogg. And what we also know is when the tree falls apart, we're into the end of the world, Ragnarok. And one wonders, are we entering into a time of Ragnarok in Western culture? Maybe we could, when we conversation started with, maybe we're in a Ragnarok time. The good thing is, as we know from the giant that was licked out of the ice, we can start again.